There are downright apocalyptic images coming out of Australia right now as the country's battling hundreds of fires that have burned across the country for months now.
While the bushfires in Australia were kicked off by elements mostly out of human control, their unprecedented magnitude did not come out of nowhere. It's consistent with years of trends, studies, and climate modeling, facts known to Australian politicians for decades. But this is not just about Australia. What happened there is merely a painful warning of what is yet to come. Fires of this magnitude will happen again, anywhere, anytime. Conservationists in Australia are already working to restore the areas that were damaged. In January, Ecosia users funded more than 26,000 trees to restore some of the areas that were burned down. But with a warming planet come uncontrollable extreme climate events. And with extreme climate events comes an unprecedented challenge to life on Earth as we have known it so far. Rising temperatures are increasing migrations globally, and governments can't seem to adapt fast enough to the changes this brings. A reality that is already empowering politicians with extreme right-wing views today.
This is something we've created. We've got to remember that we've put this excess carbon into the atmosphere. We can actually remove it through natural means.
Can Australia survive climate change? Can democracy? That will depend on how, as a society, we decide to act upon this human-made crisis.
I don't want to say for certain that the bushfires are now over, but things are a lot better than what they were before. We actually started having fires burning around August, and usually we don't have a fire season start until November, December usually. But it's been so dry here lately. Eastern Australia have had 3 years of record low rainfall during winter. So that's basically ignited this massive drought. And so therefore a lot of trees have dried out. That makes fuel. If you get an ignition source, it literally, lights up. So we had conditions conducive to bushfire weather over a large part of the country, and a part of the country that's really heavily populated. So it's kind of like this confluence of drought, climate variability, and of course climate change, which meant that we had these really big bushfires.
As the world is getting warmer from human-made climate change, so is Australia. 2019 was both its hottest and driest year on record. The average temperature across the country was 1.52 degrees above the long-term average taken between 1961 and 1990. Large-scale climate drivers affect a country's weather, as it did in Australia, with climate change magnifying otherwise natural processes, like bushfires.
It's difficult to draw a direct link. Again, coming back to Australia, as I said, we're used to having bushfires to some degree here, and our vegetation is adapted to it. You do need an ignition factor for a fire to occur. In most places, it's more about the fact that in a warmer climate, vegetation dries out more. And then if you get an ignition factor on top of that, they're more likely to be bad bushfires. So it's how climate change is driving the fire weather.
The fires in Australia killed 1 billion animals, 27 people, and displaced more than 2,300 homes. That's nothing compared to what is yet to come at a global scale. What happened in Australia is just an expression of it, a warning. The good news is, Ecosia users funded the planting of more than 26,000 trees right after the bushfires were finally put out. But the damage the fires caused are so bad that tree planting alone won't help solve the larger problems these extreme weather events are exposing.
This wasn't a normal Australian bushfire, this was a big one. Generally speaking, the advice that's being put out there at the moment is wait to see how those ecosystems naturally recover, and there should be a lot of that, but it's not, it's beyond that. This was a bit of a catastrophe. There's probably some stuff has gone extinct in Australia in 2019. Some of these areas aren't going to come back, and especially the rainforest. The rainforest isn't meant to burn, and it doesn't recover from burning.
As the world becomes warmer, the planet's natural coping mechanisms are out of balance. Are extreme weather events increasing in frequency?
Absolutely, we're seeing that now. So with rainfall events, it's a little more tricky, but certainly with temperature and extreme temperature events, that's exactly what we're seeing. So what science can actually do is look at a heat wave or an extreme temperature event and now work out how much more often that event occurs because of climate change.
Climate catastrophes, once thought of as once-in-a-century events, are now becoming the new normal, affecting people's lives and economies across borders. This chain of effects, from one local weather event to eventually destabilizing an entire country, is what scientists call systems, or cascades.
So that's the first direct link, that's the first cascade, I guess. It's climate change, it's warmer, we get more extreme temperature events. that is an ingredient into bushfires, which, and then climate change also helps drive drought, which is also an ingredient to bushfires. The bushfires burn, ecosystems are disrupted because the changes are happening so quickly. Those ecosystems can't adapt. We get invasive species. People lose their homes, people lose their livelihoods. We don't have as much species diversity. That goes on to affect, tourism, our economy, food project. It is quite, apocalyptic, but it's absolutely possible. And we have seen here, for example, in Australia, food prices have increased by about 50% for some whole food products.
But the devastating bushfires in Australia can also be an inspiration of what we can do to avoid further damages. The wildfires in California, Hurricanes Harvey or Katrina, multiple severe droughts across sub-Saharan Africa. Australia's bushfires were by no means the first sign of a warming planet. We need to bring back the natural balance of our ecosystems in multiple ways. Bringing back forests will solve a large chunk of the problem. As green cover expands, this will slowly attract more and much needed rain.
The Coriolis effect is like the clouds spinning off the equator towards the poles, right? The basic distribution of the weather. So if we want to keep the rain falling where it belongs, we need to keep forest there and also put forest back where it used to be. And this bioprecipitation will increase the rainfall where the forest is healthy.
And yet, no tree planting in the world can compensate for an economic system that might cut those trees down again as it puts profits before the health of our environment.
We've developed a very competitive and rivalrous game that we play with each other, and that's taking us over the cliff. So it's not just climate change, there's ocean acidification, there's massive biodiversity loss at rates faster than we've ever had before. We've got 60 years of topsoil left. We're using too many chemicals. We're going to have more plastic in the ocean than fish by 2050. So it's a symptom. These things are symptoms of something that's underlying the root cause.
In the past 30 years alone, climate-related disasters have tripled, forcing more than 20 million people a year out of their homes. Already today, this is empowering right-wing movements across the globe, as rich nations try to protect themselves from the influx of citizens, now turned refugees, who are just escaping their countries, collapsing under a warming planet.
I know I've even been reached out in my journeys asked questions from billionaires about the right place to locate, where's the safest part of the world, because they have that opportunity. They're able just to pack up and move and build supplies and prepare themselves. So as we know, the majority of the world don't have that luxury. And so I think that's a huge issue. There's the notion of climate justice.
Many people around the globe are already applying solutions locally, many of which the Australian director Damon Gaumont documented over 5 years in his film 2040.
Probably the thing I took away from making the film over 5 years is that there isn't one thing, there isn't one silver bullet to our problems. We really do need a systemic shift in how we've approached our relationship with each other and the planet. Often people have said to me, why are you doing what you're doing? I mean, we can't do anything about it. It just is. We're just going to have to get ready for it. And we're even seeing politicians, especially in my country, saying that, we can't do anything about it. We've just got to start adapting and preparing. And this is them justifying more land clearing and building dams and doing all the deleterious things that we don't want them to do.
Every single solution Damon documented in his film is based on technologies that exist today. It's grounded hope, as he puts it.
I looked at areas from transport to energy to the ocean to agriculture to educating girls and empowering women. There are just so many things that if we did them combined, we would actually see some, a wonderful and different looking future. We actually, through our website, partnered with about 50 different organisations to, let people activate their own climate plan. They can go to our website, we ask them some questions about the type of person they are, how much time they have available, and then we give them 7 or 8 things that they can do to get involved with. And this is the time for everyone to find their agency, find that thing that lights them up, and absolutely get involved.
We all still have a say now, today, while existing democracies, however imperfect, haven't yet crumbled completely. We need to make the fires in Australia about what they really were. On a warmer planet, what kind of world do you want to live in?